Emma Chen's hands hurt as she wiped down the last table at the diner. It was almost midnight, and her feet felt like they were on fire. She had been standing for 10 hours straight, serving customers who barely looked at her face. Some were kind and left good tips. Others were rude and left nothing but a mess to clean up. She counted her tips in the back room before leaving. $42. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. Emma put the money in her worn purse and grabbed her coat from the hook. The coat had patches on both elbows, but it kept her warm during the cold walks home. The bus ride home took 30 minutes. Emma closed her eyes and tried not to think about all the bills waiting for her. Rent was due in 5 days. She was already 2 weeks late. Her landlord, Mr. Peterson, had been patient, but his patience was running out. He had knocked on her door 3 times this week, each time looking more annoyed than before. Then there was her grandmother's medicine. The pills cost $200 every month. Without them, Grandma's heart condition would get worse. Emma couldn't let that happen. Her grandmother was the only family she had left. After Emma's parents died in a car accident 8 years ago, Grandma had taken her in, raised her, and loved her like her own daughter. Emma got off the bus at her stop and walked 3 blocks to her apartment building. The building was old and the paint was peeling off the walls. The elevator hadn't worked in 2 years, so Emma climbed the stairs to the 4th floor. By the time she reached her door, she was breathing hard. She unlocked the door quietly and stepped inside. The apartment was tiny. There was one bedroom where Grandma slept, a small living room with a couch that Emma used as her bed, and a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people to stand in. But in the corner of the living room sat Emma's most treasured possession, an old upright piano. The piano had belonged to her mother. It was scratched and some of the keys stuck when you pressed them, but it still made beautiful music. Emma's mother had been a piano teacher before she died. She had taught Emma to play when she was just 5 years old. Back then, Emma had dreamed of becoming a famous pianist performing in concert halls around the world. But dreams don't pay bills. After her parents died, Emma had to forget about music school. She had to work instead. Now, at 24 years old, she worked 3 jobs just to survive. She served tables at the diner, cleaned offices at night twice a week, and tutored kids in math on weekends. She barely had time to sleep, let alone play piano. Emma walked over to the piano and gently touched the keys. She didn't play. It was too late and the sound would wake Grandma. But just touching the piano made her feel closer to her mother. Sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, Emma would imagine her mother sitting beside her on the piano bench, guiding her hands over the keys like she used to do. She changed into her pajamas and lay down on the couch. Her body ached all over. Tomorrow she had to wake up at 6 in the morning for her office cleaning job. After that, she would go straight to the diner for the lunch shift. There would be no time to rest. Emma closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind kept spinning with worry. How would she pay rent? What if Mr. Peterson kicked them out? Where would they go? She finally fell asleep around 2 in the morning. The next few days were the same. Work, and more work. Emma moved through her life like a robot, doing what needed to be done but feeling nothing. She was too tired to feel anything. On Thursday evening, Emma was wiping down tables at the diner when something unusual happened. An elderly woman walked in wearing an expensive-looking coat. Everything about her screamed money. Her perfectly styled gray hair, her diamond earrings, the way she carried herself with confidence. The woman sat down at one of Emma's tables and ordered just a cup of tea. Emma brought it to her and smiled politely. The woman studied Emma's face for a long moment, making Emma feel uncomfortable. "You look tired, dear," the woman said gently. Emma forced a bigger smile. "I'm fine, ma'am. Can I get you anything else?" "No, thank you." The woman sipped her tea slowly, but her eyes kept following Emma around the diner. When the woman finally got up to leave, she placed a $20 bill on the table for a $3 cup of tea. But that wasn't all. Beside the money was a small black business card. Emma picked it up and looked at it. The card was simple but elegant. It said Victoria Ashford and had a phone number printed in gold letters. Emma looked up, but the woman was already gone. She stared at the card for a long time. Why would a rich woman give her a business card? Emma shoved the card into her apron pocket and continued working. She had 4 more hours left in her shift, but the next evening the woman came back. She sat at the same table and ordered the same cup of tea. This time when Emma brought it to her, the woman smiled warmly. "Have you thought about calling me?" the woman asked. Emma felt confused. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't understand. Why would I call you?" The woman gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Sit down for a moment, dear. You look like you're about to fall over." Emma glanced around nervously. Her manager didn't like it when waitresses sat down during their shifts. But the diner was quiet and her manager was in the back office. Emma sat down quickly. "My name is Victoria Ashford," the woman said. "I have a proposition for you." Emma's heart started beating faster. She had heard stories about rich people who made weird propositions to poor girls. "I'm not interested in anything inappropriate," Emma said firmly. Victoria laughed, a kind sound that made Emma relax a little. "Oh goodness, no. Nothing like that. I need a piano teacher." Emma blinked in surprise. "A piano teacher?" "Yes, for my grandson. He's 7 years old." Victoria's smile faded a little. "He's a special boy. He had an accident 2 years ago and lost his sight. Since then, he's refused to do much of anything. He sits in his room all day, barely speaking, barely living. But before the accident, he loved music." Emma felt her heart squeeze with sympathy. A blind 7-year-old boy. She couldn't imagine how scary that must be for a child. "I've hired several piano teachers," Victoria continued. "Fancy ones with impressive degrees. But none of them could reach him. They treated him like he was broken, like he was made of glass." She looked directly into Emma's eyes. "But last night I watched you work. I saw how kind you were to everyone, even the rude customers. I saw patience in you, gentleness. That's what my grandson needs." Emma shook her head. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm not a professional teacher. My mother taught me piano when I was young, and I still play sometimes, but I've never taught anyone." "That's exactly why you might succeed where the professionals failed," Victoria said. "I'm not looking for someone to teach technique. I'm looking for someone who can reach a lonely little boy's heart." Emma wanted to say no. She was already working 3 jobs. She was exhausted all the time. But then Victoria mentioned the payment. "I'll pay you $3,000 a month for 3 lessons a week. Each lesson would be 1 hour." Emma's mouth fell open. $3,000? That was more than she made at all 3 of her jobs combined. With that money, she could pay rent on time. She could buy Grandma's medicine without worry. She might even be able to sleep more than 4 hours a night. "That's too much money," Emma whispered. Victoria smiled. "That's what my grandson is worth to me. Will you do it?" Emma thought about the blind little boy sitting alone in his room. She thought about her mother, who had taught her that music could heal broken hearts. She thought about her bills and her grandmother and her exhausted body. "Yes," Emma said. "I'll do it." Victoria's whole face lit up. She reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. "Thank you, dear. Thank you so much." She pulled out a piece of paper and wrote down an address. "Come on Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. I'll introduce you to Oliver." After Victoria left, Emma stared at the address. It was in the richest part of the city, where enormous houses sat behind tall gates. Emma had never been to that neighborhood. She wondered what kind of house Oliver lived in. The next 2 days dragged by slowly. Emma was nervous and excited at the same time. She went to the library and checked out books about teaching music to blind children. She wanted to be prepared. She wanted to help this little boy. On Saturday morning, Emma woke up early and took a long shower. She put on her nicest dress, a simple blue one that her grandmother had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. She brushed her long black hair until it shined and put on a little bit of makeup. She wanted to look professional. Grandma was sitting in her chair in the living room when Emma came out of the bathroom. Her grandmother looked at her with surprise. "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Where are you going?" Emma had told Grandma about the job offer. Now she sat down beside her grandmother and took her wrinkled hand. "I'm going to teach piano to a little boy. Remember I told you about Mrs. Ashford?" Grandma nodded. "The rich woman from the diner. Are you sure about this, Emma? Rich people can be complicated." "I'm sure, Grandma. The money will help us so much. And maybe I can actually help this boy." Grandma squeezed her hand. "Your mother would be so proud of you. You have her kind heart." Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. She kissed her grandmother's cheek and grabbed her bag. Inside the bag, she had put some simple sheet music and a notebook. The bus ride to the rich neighborhood took almost an hour. Emma had to transfer twice. As the bus got closer to the address, the houses got bigger and bigger. By the time Emma got off at her stop, she felt like she had entered a different world. The houses here weren't just houses. They were mansions. Each one sat behind tall gates and perfect lawns. Expensive cars were parked in long driveways. Everything looked clean and beautiful and untouchable. Emma walked up the street, checking the house numbers. Her heart was pounding in her chest. She felt out of place in her simple dress and worn shoes. Finally, she found the right address. She stood in front of a massive iron gate and stared at the house beyond it. It wasn't really a house. It was a palace made of glass and steel. It was modern and cold-looking, nothing like the warm, cozy homes Emma had imagined rich people lived in. There was a small box beside the gate with a button on it. Emma pressed the button with a shaking finger. A man's voice came through the speaker. "Yes? My name is Emma Chen. Mrs. Ashford is expecting me." There was a pause, then the gate slowly swung open. Emma walked up the long driveway, her shoes clicking on the perfect concrete. The closer she got to the house, the more nervous she became. The house was so big, so cold, so unwelcoming. The front door opened before Emma could knock. A woman stood there wearing a gray uniform. She looked stern and unfriendly. "You're the piano teacher?" the woman asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Follow me." The woman turned and walked into the house without waiting. Emma hurried after her. Inside, the house was even more impressive. Everything was white and clean. The floors were marble. The ceilings were high. Expensive-looking art hung on the walls. But despite all its beauty, the house felt empty, cold. There was no warmth here, no feeling of home. The stern woman led Emma through several hallways. Emma tried to remember the way but quickly got lost. The house was like a maze. Finally, they stopped in front of a large wooden door. The woman opened it and gestured for Emma to enter. "The music room," she said. "The boy will be here shortly." Then she left, closing the door behind her. Emma stood in the music room and looked around. It was a beautiful room with tall windows that let in lots of light. In the center of the room sat the most beautiful piano Emma had ever seen. It was a grand piano, black and shining like a jewel. Emma walked over to it and gently touched the keys. The sound was perfect, pure. This piano probably cost more than Emma would make in her entire life. She heard the door open and turned around. Mrs. Ashford walked in, but she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a small boy with dark hair and pale skin. He wore nice clothes and expensive shoes, but he looked so small, so lost. The boy's eyes were open, but Emma could tell he wasn't seeing anything. His eyes looked straight ahead but focused on nothing. "Oliver, this is Miss Emma," Mrs. Ashford said gently. "She's going to be your new piano teacher." The boy said nothing. He didn't even turn his head toward Emma's voice. Mrs. Ashford led Oliver to the piano bench and helped him sit down. Then she turned to Emma and gave her an encouraging smile. "I'll leave you two alone to get to know each other," she said quietly. Emma's heart was racing as Mrs. Ashford left the room. Now it was just her and the silent little boy. She sat down beside him on the piano bench. Oliver didn't move. He just sat there, his small hands in his lap, his face blank. Emma didn't know what to say. All the books she had read suddenly seemed useless. This wasn't about teaching techniques or methods. This was about reaching a scared, lonely child. "Hi, Oliver," Emma said softly. "My name is Emma. I'm really happy to meet you." Oliver said nothing. Emma looked at his small profile. He was a beautiful child with delicate features, but there was no life in his face. No curiosity, no joy. "Do you like music?" Emma asked. No response. "I love music," Emma continued. "My mother taught me to play piano when I was even younger than you. She used to say that music is like magic. It can make you feel things that words can't describe." Still nothing. Emma gently touched the piano keys, playing a soft, simple melody. It was a lullaby her mother used to play for her. The notes filled the quiet room like gentle rain. For just a moment, Emma thought she saw Oliver's head tilt slightly toward the sound. But then he was still again, and Emma wondered if she had imagined it. She finished the song and the room fell silent again. "I'm not going to force you to play today," Emma said quietly. "We can just sit here if you want. Sometimes it's nice to just sit with someone, even in silence." They sat together on the piano bench for the rest of the hour. Emma didn't push. She didn't ask questions. She just stayed beside the lonely little boy, occasionally playing soft melodies, filling the cold house with warmth. When Mrs. Ashford came back to get Oliver, the boy hadn't spoken a single word. He hadn't touched the piano. He hadn't even looked at Emma. But as Oliver stood up to leave, Emma could have sworn she saw the smallest change in his expression. Something in his blank face had softened just a tiny bit. After they left, Emma sat alone in the music room for a moment. She felt overwhelmed. How could she possibly help this child? She was just a waitress who played piano. She wasn't trained for this. But then she remembered her mother's words. Music doesn't come from training, Emma. It comes from the heart. Emma stood up and walked out of the music room. The stern woman was waiting in the hallway to show her out. As Emma walked back through the cold, beautiful house, she noticed something strange. She felt like she was being watched. She looked around but saw no one. Still, the feeling remained. It followed her all the way to the front door, all the way down the long driveway, all the way through the iron gate. Emma turned back once before she left and looked up at the enormous house of glass and steel. Somewhere in one of those windows she thought she saw a shadow, a figure standing and watching. But when she blinked, it was gone. Emma shook her head and started walking toward the bus stop. She was just imagining things. Rich people's houses always felt strange. She didn't know that she was right. Someone had been watching. Someone had been standing in his office behind a two-way mirror, watching every moment of her first lesson with Oliver. Alexander Ashford had watched this new teacher with careful eyes. He had hired detectives to investigate her background. He knew about her 3 jobs, her sick grandmother, her struggles with money. He knew everything about Emma Chen, and unlike the other teachers, this one had done something different. She hadn't tried to fix Oliver. She hadn't treated him like a problem to solve. She had just sat with him, just been present. Alexander stood in his office for a long time after Emma left, staring at the empty music room through the mirror. His son was broken. His family was broken. He was broken, but maybe, just maybe, this poor girl with kind eyes and gentle hands could help them start to heal. Emma came back to the Ashford mansion 3 days later for her second lesson with Oliver. She felt less nervous this time, but still uncertain. The first lesson had been so quiet, so still. She wondered if she was really the right person for this job. The same stern woman answered the door. She led Emma through the maze of hallways to the music room without saying a word. Emma was starting to think that nobody in this house knew how to smile. Oliver was already sitting at the piano when Emma arrived. He looked exactly the same as before, small, pale, and blank-faced. Mrs. Ashford stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Good afternoon, Miss Emma," Mrs. Ashford said warmly. At least someone in this house was kind. "Good afternoon," Emma replied. She sat down beside Oliver on the piano bench. "Hello, Oliver." The boy didn't respond. Mrs. Ashford gave Emma an encouraging nod and left the room. Once again, Emma was alone with the silent child. Emma had spent the last 3 days thinking about how to reach Oliver. She had read more books. She had planned different approaches. But now, sitting beside him, all her plans seemed useless. This child needed something more than lessons. He needed connection. "I'm going to tell you a secret," Emma said softly. "When I was little, I was afraid of the dark. Every night I would lie in bed and imagine scary things hiding in the shadows. My mother tried everything to help me feel better. She bought me nightlights. She checked under my bed. She left my door open. But nothing worked." Emma paused. She wasn't sure if Oliver was listening, but she continued anyway. "Then one night my mother sat on my bed and taught me something. She said that darkness isn't scary. It's just the absence of light. And in the darkness, other things become stronger. Like sound, like touch, like imagination." Emma gently played a few notes on the piano. She taught me to close my eyes and just listen. And you know what? The darkness became beautiful. I could hear things I never noticed before. The wind in the trees, the crickets singing, my own heartbeat. Oliver's head tilted slightly toward Emma. It was such a small movement, but Emma noticed it. Her heart lifted a little. "I think you know what I mean," Emma said quietly. "I think you hear things that other people miss. That's not a bad thing, Oliver. That's a gift." For the first time, Oliver spoke. His voice was so quiet that Emma almost missed it. "It's not a gift," he whispered. "It's punishment." Emma's heart broke a little. "Why do you think it's punishment?" Oliver's small hands gripped his knees. "Because I was bad. The accident happened because I was bad." "Oh, Oliver." Emma wanted to hug him, but she held back. She didn't want to scare him. "Accidents aren't punishments. They're just terrible things that happen sometimes. You didn't do anything wrong." Oliver shook his head. "Mama died. I didn't. I should have died instead. Tears filled Emma's eyes. This poor child had been carrying such heavy guilt. No wonder he had shut down. No wonder he didn't want to live. Your mama wouldn't want you to think that, Emma said gently. I lost my mama too. And my papa. They died in a car accident when I was 16. And for a long time I felt guilty too. I thought maybe if I had been with them I could have helped somehow. But my grandma told me something important. She said that the people who love us don't want us to stop living just because they're gone. They want us to live even bigger, even brighter, to live for them too. Oliver was quiet for a long moment. Then he whispered, I can't see bright anymore. But you can hear it, Emma said, and feel it, and create it. She played a bright, happy melody on the piano. The notes danced through the room like sunlight. That's bright. Can you hear it? The smallest hint of a smile touched Oliver's lips. Just for a second, but Emma saw it. Now listen to this, Emma said. She played a dark, heavy melody. The notes were deep and sad. That's darkness. Both are beautiful. Both are important. Music needs both light and dark to tell a story. Oliver's hands slowly moved from his lap to the piano keys. His fingers touched them lightly, not pressing down, just feeling. Can you teach me? He asked. Emma's heart soared. Yes, I can teach you. They spent the rest of the lesson with Emma guiding Oliver's fingers to different keys, letting him feel the differences between high notes and low notes, teaching him where middle C was located. Oliver didn't play anything yet, but he listened carefully to everything Emma said. He asked questions. He was present. When Mrs. Ashford came to collect Oliver at the end of the hour, she looked shocked. He spoke to you? Emma nodded, smiling. Yes, we had a good talk. Mrs. Ashford's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. After Emma left that day, Alexander Ashford sat in his office, staring at the video recording of the lesson. He had watched it live through the two-way mirror, and now he was watching it again. The girl had made Oliver speak. More than that, she had made him want to learn. In just 2 lessons, she had reached his son in a way that nobody else had managed in 2 years. Alexander leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept well in years. Ever since the accident, every night was filled with nightmares. He would see his wife's face in those final seconds. He would hear his son screaming. He would wake up covered in sweat, his heart racing, knowing that he had failed to protect the people he loved most. The accident had been his fault. He had been driving. He had been on his phone, distracted by a work call. He hadn't seen the drunk driver until it was too late. His wife had thrown herself over Oliver to protect him. She had saved their son's life and lost her own. Oliver survived, but he lost his sight. And Alexander lost everything. His wife, his son's trust, his own sense of worth. For 2 years, Alexander had watched his son fade away. Oliver had stopped talking, stopped playing, stopped being a child. He just existed, silent and sad, locked in his own dark world. Alexander had tried everything. He hired the best doctors, the best therapists, the best teachers. Nothing worked. Oliver remained unreachable, until Emma Chen walked into their lives. Alexander pulled up the background investigation on his computer. Emma's file was thorough. 24 years old. Parents deceased. Lives with elderly grandmother. Works 3 jobs. Struggles with money but has never been in legal trouble. Never even had a parking ticket. There were photos attached to the file. Pictures of Emma at the diner, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her smile tired but genuine. Pictures of her at the bus stop, clutching her coat around her thin body. Pictures of her walking into her rundown apartment building. Alexander felt something strange in his chest as he looked at the photos. It felt almost like guilt. This girl was struggling so much, and here he was investigating her like she was a criminal. But he had to protect Oliver. He couldn't let just anyone into his son's life. He had to be careful. Still, the investigation had shown him something important. Emma Chen was exactly what she appeared to be. A kind, hard-working girl who was trying her best in difficult circumstances. She had no hidden agenda, no dark secrets. She was just good. Alexander closed the file and turned off his computer. He should be happy. The teacher was working. Oliver was responding. This was what he had hoped for. So why did he feel so unsettled? The next lesson was even better than the second. Emma arrived at the mansion and found Oliver already sitting at the piano, his fingers resting on the keys. He was waiting for her. "Miss Emma," Oliver said when he heard her footsteps. He had learned to recognize the sound of her walk. "I've been practicing." "Practicing what?" Emma asked, delighted. "Finding Middle C. Grandma helped me. I can find it now without counting from the end." Emma sat beside him. "Show me." Oliver's hand moved across the keys confidently. He found Middle C on the first try. "See? That's wonderful, Oliver," Emma said. "You're going to be amazing at this." They spent that lesson working on a simple exercise. Emma taught Oliver how to play 5 notes in a row, using his thumb, pointer, middle, ring, and pinky fingers. At first, his fingers were stiff and uncertain, but Emma was patient. She guided his hand gently, showing him how to curve his fingers, how to press the keys with confidence. By the end of the hour, Oliver could play the 5-note exercise by himself. It was just 5 simple notes, but to Emma it sounded like a symphony, because those notes meant that Oliver was coming back to life. "You did so well today," Emma told him. "I'm proud of you." Oliver's face lit up with the biggest smile Emma had seen yet. "Really? Really? You're a natural." After Oliver left with his grandmother, Emma sat at the piano for a moment, feeling happy. This job was so different from her other jobs. At the diner, nobody cared about her. At the office cleaning job, she was invisible. But here she felt like she mattered, like she was making a real difference. Emma stood up and started walking toward the door. But as she passed a large mirror on the wall, she noticed something odd. The reflection didn't look quite right. The mirror seemed darker than it should be. Emma stepped closer and peered at it. That's when she realized it wasn't a regular mirror. It was a 2-way mirror. Someone could be standing on the other side watching, and she would never know. A chill ran down Emma's spine. Had someone been watching the lessons? Watching her? She thought about what Mrs. Ashford had said during their first meeting. "My son is protective. It's best if you focus solely on Oliver. Don't mind the shadows in that house," Emma understood now. Oliver's father was watching. He didn't trust her yet. Emma wasn't sure what to say to that. She was just a piano teacher. How could she help a powerful CEO heal from his grief? But she thought about Oliver's father watching the lessons from behind the mirror. She thought about how he was trying to protect his son while dealing with his own guilt and pain, and she felt sorry for him. Life continued. Emma kept teaching Oliver 3 times a week. She kept working her other jobs too, though now she didn't have to work as many hours at the diner. The money from teaching Oliver was helping so much. For the first time in years, Emma wasn't drowning in debt. She paid rent on time. She bought her grandmother's medicine without worry. She even bought herself a new coat. But even though things were better financially, Emma was exhausted. Between teaching Oliver and working her other jobs, she barely had time to sleep. She started getting headaches. Her hands shook sometimes from tiredness. One day, Emma was so tired during a lesson that she nearly fell asleep at the piano. Oliver was practicing a simple song, and Emma's eyes started closing. She jerked awake just before she fell off the bench. "Miss Emma, are you okay?" Oliver asked with concern. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Emma said, but her voice was weak. That evening, Emma had to work the night shift at her office cleaning job. She arrived at the tall office building at 11 at night. Usually, there were 2 other cleaners working with her, but tonight, one of them had called in sick. So Emma had to clean twice as many offices. By 3 in the morning, Emma felt like she was moving through water. Everything was slow and difficult. Her head pounded. Her vision was blurry. She was mopping the floor on the 20th floor when it happened. The room started spinning. Emma tried to grab onto something, but her hands found only air. She felt herself falling, and then everything went black. Emma woke up in a hospital bed. Bright lights hurt her eyes. She groaned and tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pushed her back down. "Don't move yet," a familiar voice said. Emma's eyes focused. Mrs. Ashford was sitting beside her bed, looking worried. "What happened?" Emma asked. Her voice was scratchy. "You fainted at work," Mrs. Ashford explained. "You've been unconscious for 6 hours. The doctors say you're exhausted. Your body just shut down." Emma closed her eyes. The hospital. She couldn't afford the hospital. How much would this cost? Panic rose in her chest. "Don't worry about the bill," Mrs. Ashford said, as if reading her mind. "It's taken care of." "I can't let you pay for this," Emma protested weakly. "Too late. It's already done. Mrs. Ashford squeezed Emma's hand. Why didn't you tell me you were working yourself to death? You're teaching Oliver, working at a diner and cleaning offices at night. That's too much for anyone. Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. She was too tired to stop them. I needed the money. I couldn't just quit my other jobs. Yes, you could have. We would have helped. I don't want charity, Emma whispered. Mrs. Ashford smiled sadly. It's not charity, dear. You're giving our family something priceless. You're bringing Oliver back to us. Let us help you in return. The hospital door opened. Emma expected to see a doctor or nurse, but instead, a tall man walked in. He wore an expensive dark suit and had sharp, handsome features. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray, beautiful but cold. There was no emotion in his face at all. Emma knew immediately who he was. Alexander Ashford, the Ice King himself. He looked at Emma for a long moment, his gray eyes studying her with intense focus. Emma felt like he was looking straight through her, seeing all her secrets, all her weaknesses. Miss Chen, he said. His voice was deep and smooth, but completely emotionless. We need to talk. Mrs. Ashford stood up. Alexander, she just woke up. This can wait. No, Alexander said firmly. It can't. He pulled a chair close to Emma's bed and sat down. Even sitting, he looked powerful and intimidating. Emma felt very small and vulnerable in her hospital gown with her hair messy and her face pale. You will quit your other jobs, Alexander said. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Emma's exhausted mind struggled to process his words. I can't do that. I need the money. I will pay you $6,000 a month instead of $3,000. That will be more than enough to cover your expenses and support your grandmother. Emma's mouth fell open. $6,000? That was an enormous amount of money. That's too much, she whispered. No, it isn't. My son is thriving under your care. In just 1 month, you've accomplished what years of expensive therapy couldn't do. You're worth every penny. His cold gray eyes bore into hers. But you can't help Oliver if you're unconscious on a floor somewhere. You will quit your other jobs. You will take care of your health. You will be available for Oliver whenever he needs you. Those are my terms. And if I say no? Emma asked, though she didn't know where she found the courage to challenge this intimidating man. The corner of Alexander's mouth twitched. It might have been the hint of a smile, but Emma couldn't be sure. Then I will pay your other employers to fire you. Either way, you're quitting those jobs. The only question is whether you're going to accept my very generous offer or make this difficult. Emma stared at him. Was he serious? Would he really do that? She looked at his face and realized that yes, he absolutely would. Alexander Ashford was used to getting what he wanted. He didn't make threats he couldn't follow through on. Fine, Emma said quietly. I accept your offer. Good. Alexander stood up. My assistant will handle the paperwork. You'll receive your first increased payment at the end of this week. He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. And Miss Chen? Thank you for helping my son. Then he was gone, leaving Emma stunned and confused. Don't mind his cold manner, Mrs. Ashford said gently. That's just how Alexander is. But trust me, underneath that ice, he's grateful. Emma wasn't sure about that. The man seemed to be made entirely of ice with no warmth underneath. But she supposed it didn't matter. He was paying her well to teach Oliver. That was enough. Emma spent 2 days in the hospital recovering. The doctors said she had been severely sleep-deprived and malnourished. They gave her IV fluids and made her eat regular meals. They also made her promise to take better care of herself. When Emma finally went home, her grandmother cried with relief. Don't you ever scare me like that again, Grandma said, hugging Emma tightly. I won't, Grandma. I promise. The next week, Emma quit her jobs at the diner and the cleaning company. It felt strange to have so much free time suddenly. She didn't know what to do with herself. But Mrs. Ashford had ideas. She suggested Emma use her extra time to practice piano, to work on her own music. Emma started spending hours at her old piano at home, playing pieces she had learned years ago, rediscovering her love for music. She also spent more time with Oliver. Now that she wasn't exhausted all the time, Emma had more energy and creativity for their lessons. She taught Oliver more complex pieces. She taught him about rhythm and tempo. She taught him to play with emotion, not just technique. Oliver was thriving. He was playing beautiful music now. But more than that, he was happy. He laughed often. He made friends with the household staff. He started talking about wanting to go back to school someday. And through it all, Emma felt the presence of the shadow watching. Alexander Ashford was always there behind the two-way mirror, observing every lesson. Emma still hadn't officially met him since that day in the hospital. He was like a ghost in the house, present but never seen. Sometimes Emma would arrive at the mansion and smell fresh coffee, and she knew he had just been in the room. Sometimes she would see a light on in the upper floor windows and know he was working late into the night. The house staff told Emma that Alexander worked almost 20 hours a day. He slept only 3 or 4 hours a night. He ate meals at his desk. He never took breaks or vacations. Emma thought it was sad. Here was a man who had everything, money, power, success, but he had no life. No joy. He was a prisoner in his own perfectly beautiful house. One evening, Emma stayed late after Oliver's lesson. She was sitting in the garden with Mrs. Ashford, drinking tea and watching the sunset, when she heard piano music coming from inside the house. Emma and Mrs. Ashford looked at each other in surprise. "Is that Oliver?" Emma asked. Mrs. Ashford shook her head slowly. "No, that's Alexander." They both fell silent, listening. The music was beautiful but heartbreaking. It was full of pain and longing and loss. Whoever was playing Alexander was pouring his broken heart into every note. Emma felt tears on her cheeks. She didn't even realize she was crying until Mrs. Ashford handed her a tissue. "He used to play all the time," Mrs. Ashford said quietly. "Before the accident, he and his wife would play duets together. But after she died, he stopped. This is the first time I've heard him play in 2 years." "Why now?" Emma whispered. Mrs. Ashford smiled. "Because you brought music back into this house, dear. You reminded him of what he lost, and sometimes remembering is the first step toward healing." Emma listened to Alexander play until the sun set completely, and the garden grew dark. And for the first time she realized that she wasn't just teaching a blind little boy to play piano. She was bringing light back into a family that had been living in darkness for too long. 2 months had passed since Emma started teaching Oliver. The change in him was remarkable. The quiet, withdrawn boy had transformed into a cheerful child who loved music and life. He could now play several simple songs, and he was starting to learn more complex pieces. But something else was changing too. Something Emma hadn't expected. She was starting to see Alexander Ashford more often. At first it was just glimpses. She would arrive at the mansion and see him walking down a hallway in his perfectly pressed suit. Or she would be leaving and see his car pulling into the driveway. They never spoke. He would just nod at her coldly and continue on his way. Then one day something different happened. Emma was in the middle of a lesson with Oliver when the door to the music room opened. Oliver was playing a cheerful little tune that Emma had taught him, his fingers dancing confidently over the keys. Emma looked up expecting to see Mrs. Ashford, but it was Alexander. He stood in the doorway, tall and imposing in his dark suit, his gray eyes fixed on his son. Emma's heart started beating faster. She didn't know why this man made her so nervous. Maybe it was because he was so powerful. Or maybe it was because his eyes seemed to see everything. Oliver's fingers stumbled on the keys. He stopped playing. "Dad," he said uncertainly. "Don't stop," Alexander said. His voice was softer than Emma had heard before. "I want to hear the song." Oliver hesitated, then started playing again. But his playing was stiff now, nervous. Emma could tell he was worried about making mistakes in front of his father. Emma leaned close to Oliver and whispered, "Just feel the music. Don't think about anything else." Oliver took a deep breath and relaxed. His playing became smooth again, confident. He finished the song without any mistakes. When the last note faded, Alexander walked into the room. He came to stand beside the piano, looking down at his son with an expression that Emma couldn't quite read. Was it pride, sadness, love, all three? "That was beautiful," Alexander said quietly. Oliver's whole face lit up. "Really, you think so?" "I know so." Alexander reached out and gently touched Oliver's hair. It was such a simple gesture, but Emma saw Oliver lean into his father's touch like a flower turning toward the sun. Emma felt like she was intruding on a private moment. She started to stand up, ready to leave them alone. But Alexander's voice stopped her. "Please stay. Miss Chen, I'd like to watch the rest of the lesson, if that's acceptable." It wasn't really a request. Emma nodded and sat back down. "Of course." Alexander pulled a chair from the corner of the room and sat down. Emma was very aware of his presence as she continued teaching Oliver. She felt his gray eyes watching every move she made, listening to every word she said. But something strange happened. Instead of making Emma more nervous, Alexander's presence seemed to make Oliver play better. The boy was showing off for his father, wanting to impress him. And it was working. Oliver played beautifully that day. When the lesson ended, Alexander stood up. "Thank you, Miss Chen, that was enlightening." Then he did something unexpected. He held out his hand to Emma. Emma stared at his hand for a moment, then shook it. His hand was large and warm, his grip firm but not crushing. "You're welcome, Mr. Ashford. Please, call me Alexander. We're practically family now, aren't we? You spend more time with my son than I do." There was something bitter in his voice when he said that last part. Emma realized that Alexander felt guilty about working so much. He was missing his son's childhood, and he knew it. "Oliver understands that you work hard to take care of him," Emma said gently. Alexander's eyes met hers. For just a moment, Emma saw past the ice in those gray eyes. She saw pain, exhaustion, loneliness. Then the ice returned and his expression became unreadable again. "Perhaps," he said, "but understanding doesn't make it hurt less." After that day, Alexander started coming to the lessons regularly. At first, he just watched silently from his chair in the corner, but gradually he started participating more. He would ask Oliver to play certain songs. He would praise Oliver's progress. Once, he even corrected Oliver's posture when the boy was slouching. Emma noticed that Oliver was happier when his father was present. The boy craved his father's attention and approval. And slowly, very slowly, Alexander was learning to give it. One afternoon, after a particularly good lesson, Alexander asked Emma to stay after Oliver left with his grandmother. Emma agreed, though she felt nervous being alone with him. They sat in the music room together. Alexander sat at the piano bench and Emma sat in the chair he usually used. It felt strange to switch positions. "I want to thank you properly," Alexander said. "What you've done for Oliver. I don't have words for it. You've given me my son back." Emma smiled. "Oliver did the hard work. I just guided him a little. Don't be modest. You did much more than that." Alexander's fingers touched the piano keys, not playing, just resting there. Oliver wasn't the only one who was lost after the accident. "I was lost too. I am lost. I've been stumbling through darkness for 2 years. Not knowing how to fix things, not knowing how to help my son or help myself." Emma had never heard Alexander talk like this. He always seemed so controlled, so cold. But right now he seemed almost human. "You can't fix everything," Emma said quietly. "Sometimes you just have to accept that terrible things happen and all you can do is keep moving forward." "Is that what you did? After your parents died?" Emma was surprised he knew about that. But then again, he had probably investigated her thoroughly before hiring her. "Yes, I didn't want to keep living at first. The grief was so heavy. But my grandmother needed me, and eventually I found reasons to smile again. Small things like music, like watching the sunrise, like helping other people." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My wife loved music. She was a pianist, much better than I ever was. She was going to teach Oliver to play." His voice cracked slightly. "She should be here. She should be the one teaching him. Not a stranger, not you. No offense, none taken," Emma said. "You're right. Your wife should be here, but she can't be. And you can honor her memory by making sure Oliver grows up happy and healthy and full of music. That's what she would want." Alexander's hands formed fists on the piano keys, creating a harsh, discordant sound. "I can't forgive myself. I was driving. I was distracted. The accident was my fault. The drunk driver was at fault," Emma said firmly. "Not you. I should have seen him. I should have reacted faster. I should have protected my family." Emma stood up and walked over to the piano. She sat down beside Alexander on the bench, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "You did protect them. You swerved. You tried. The police report said that if you hadn't swerved, the impact would have killed all 3 of you. Your quick reaction saved Oliver's life." Alexander turned to look at her. His gray eyes were full of unshed tears. "But not my wife's life. And not Oliver's sight. No, not those. And I'm so sorry." Emma placed her hand over his fist. His hand was shaking. "But you saved what you could. And now you need to keep saving. Oliver needs his father. Not a ghost who works 20 hours a day and hides behind mirrors." Alexander looked shocked. "You knew I was watching?" I figured it out. The two-way mirror gave it away. A sound escaped from Alexander's throat. It might have been a laugh, but it sounded rusty, like he hadn't laughed in a very long time. Of course you did. You're remarkably observant. It's okay that you were watching, Emma said. You needed to make sure I was good for Oliver. I understand. I wasn't just watching Oliver, Alexander admitted quietly. I was watching you too. I wanted to understand who you are. What makes you so different? Emma felt her cheeks grow warm. I'm not different. I'm just a regular person. No, you're not. Alexander's eyes held hers. You have something most people don't have. You have genuine kindness, patience, warmth. You gave those things to my son freely, expecting nothing in return except your payment. You never tried to use Oliver to get close to our family's money. You never asked for favors or special treatment. You just cared. Emma didn't know what to say. She had never thought of herself as special. She was just doing what felt right. I've been thinking, Alexander continued. Oliver is learning so quickly now. In a few months, he'll be ready to go back to school. But he's going to need continued support, not just with music, but with adjusting to life as a blind child in a sighted world. What are you asking? I want you to become Oliver's full-time companion and tutor, not just for piano, but for everything. Help him learn to navigate the world. Help him build confidence. Be there for him. Alexander paused. The salary would be $10,000 a month. Emma's head spun. $10,000 a month? That was more money than she had ever imagined having. That's too much, she whispered. It's not enough, Alexander countered. My son's well-being is priceless. If you do this, you'd be giving up any chance of having your own life. You'd need to be available for Oliver almost constantly. The money reflects that sacrifice. Emma thought about it. She loved working with Oliver. She loved seeing his progress. And with that much money, she could give her grandmother the best medical care. She could even start saving for her own future. But there was something else too. Something she barely wanted to admit to herself. She wanted to stay in this house. She wanted to keep seeing Alexander. Over the past few weeks, she had started to care about this cold, broken man. She wanted to help him heal, just like she was helping Oliver heal. I'll do it, Emma said. Relief flooded Alexander's face. Thank you. You don't know what this means to me. They sat together on the piano bench for a moment longer, not speaking, just being present with each other. Emma was aware of how close they were sitting, how she could feel the warmth of his body next to hers. Then Alexander stood up abruptly, as if suddenly realizing the intimacy of the moment. I should get back to work. Thank you again, Emma. It was the first time he had called her by her first name instead of Miss Chen. Emma liked the way her name sounded in his deep voice. After Alexander left, Emma sat alone in the music room, her heart beating fast. Something was changing. She could feel it. The cold house was slowly becoming warmer. The shadows were slowly retreating, and the ice around Alexander's heart was slowly starting to melt. The next few weeks were busy. Emma officially quit teaching just piano and became Oliver's full-time companion. She helped him with reading lessons using Braille. She helped him learn to navigate the mansion without assistance. She took him on walks in the garden, teaching him to identify plants by their smell and texture. Oliver thrived under the constant attention. He became more independent every day. He learned to dress himself, to find his way around the house, to do simple tasks without help. Emma was so proud of him, and Alexander was around more often now. He started leaving work earlier to have dinner with Oliver. He would join them for walks in the garden. Once he even played piano with Oliver, the two of them doing a simple duet together. Emma watched father and son reconnecting, and her heart felt full. This was why she had taken this job. Not for the money, though that helped, but for this, for seeing a broken family slowly healing. One evening, Emma was getting ready to leave for the day when she heard shouting. It was coming from Alexander's office. Emma hesitated. She should probably just leave. This wasn't her business. But the shouting got louder, and Emma recognized Alexander's voice. He sounded furious about something. Emma walked quietly toward the office. The door was slightly open. She could hear Alexander on the phone. I don't care what the board wants, Alexander said harshly. I'm not spending 3 months in Singapore. I have responsibilities here. There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. My son is my priority now, Alexander continued. For 2 years, I buried myself in work because I couldn't face what I'd lost. But I'm done running. If the board doesn't like it, they can find a new CEO. Emma's eyes widened. Alexander was choosing his family over his work. This was huge. There was more talking from the other end of the phone. Then Alexander said firmly, "My decision is final. Schedule video conferences for the Singapore project. I'm not leaving my son. Goodbye." Emma heard the phone slam down. She quickly backed away from the door, not wanting Alexander to know she had been listening. But as she turned to leave, she bumped into a table, knocking over a vase. The vase didn't break, but it made enough noise that Alexander came out of his office. He saw Emma standing there, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," Emma said quickly. "I wasn't trying to spy. I was just leaving and I heard shouting and I got worried." "It's fine," Alexander interrupted. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. "I'm sorry you heard that. I try not to bring work drama into this house." "You were standing up for Oliver," Emma said. "Don't apologize for that." Alexander leaned against the doorframe of his office. "The company wants me to go to Singapore for 3 months to oversee a new project. It's important and normally I would go without hesitation, but I can't leave Oliver right now. He's making so much progress. If I disappear for 3 months, he would feel abandoned," Emma finished. "Yes," Alexander rubbed his eyes. "The board thinks I'm being unreasonable. They think I can manage everything through video calls. But they don't understand. Oliver needs me here, physically present, not just a face on a screen." Emma walked closer to him. "You're being a good father. That's more important than any business deal." Alexander looked at her, and something in his expression made Emma's breath catch. He was looking at her the way people look at something precious, something they're afraid to lose. "You've changed me," Alexander said quietly. "Before you came into our lives, all I cared about was work. It was my escape from the pain. But watching you with Oliver, seeing how you make him laugh, how you encourage him, how you believe in him, it made me realize what I was missing. I was so focused on punishing myself for the accident that I was missing my son's childhood." "You're not missing it anymore," Emma said softly. "No, thanks to you." Alexander took a step closer. They were standing very close now, close enough that Emma could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes. "Emma, He stopped, as if unsure what he wanted to say. The air between them felt charged, electric. Emma's heart was racing. Then Alexander shook his head and stepped back, breaking the moment. "I should let you go home. It's late." Emma nodded, feeling disappointed, though she wasn't sure why. "Good night, Alexander." "Good night, Emma." Emma left the mansion and walked to the bus stop, her mind spinning. What had just happened? Had Alexander been about to say something important? And why did her heart beat so fast when he looked at her like that? Emma tried to push the thoughts away. She was just Oliver's tutor. That's all. She couldn't let herself think of Alexander as anything more than her employer. But it was too late. Emma was already falling for the Ice King, and she had no idea how to stop. The following week, something happened that changed everything. Emma arrived at the mansion for her usual morning session with Oliver. But when she walked into the music room, she found Oliver sitting at the piano crying. Emma rushed to him. "Oliver, what's wrong?" Oliver turned his tear-stained face toward her voice. "Miss Emma, I had a bad dream. I dreamed that you left, that you went away and never came back, just like Mama." Emma's heart broke. She knelt down beside the piano bench and took Oliver's hands. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm not going anywhere. I promise." "But everyone leaves," Oliver sobbed. "Mama left. Dad left. He used to never be home. What if you leave too?" "I won't leave you," Emma said firmly. She pulled Oliver into a hug, and he clung to her like she was the only solid thing in his world. "I care about you so much, Oliver. You're like family to me now." "Really?" Oliver's voice was muffled against her shoulder. "Really, I promise." They stayed like that for a long time, Emma holding the scared little boy until his tears stopped. She didn't know that Alexander was watching through the two-way mirror, his own eyes filled with tears. He watched Emma comfort his son with such natural love and tenderness. He watched Oliver cling to her like she was his mother. And Alexander realized something that shook him to his core. He didn't just appreciate Emma for what she did for Oliver. He didn't just respect her or admire her. He was falling in love with her. The realization terrified him. He hadn't felt anything like this since his wife died. He had thought that part of him died in the accident too, but here it was, blooming back to life, painful and beautiful and terrifying. He loved Emma Chen, the poor girl who worked 3 jobs, the piano teacher who had brought light back into his dark world, the woman who had taught his son to live again. But Alexander didn't know if he deserved to love again. He didn't know if he deserved someone as good and pure as Emma. He was broken, cold, damaged. Still, watching her hold his son, watching her promise to stay, Alexander made a decision. He was going to try. He was going to let himself feel again. He was going to step out of the shadows and into the light, even if it terrified him, even if he didn't think he deserved it. For Oliver, and for Emma, and maybe, just maybe, for himself. Emma noticed the change in Alexander immediately. He was around more often. He smiled more. He talked more. The ice was melting, and underneath it was a man who was kind and thoughtful and surprisingly gentle. He started joining Emma and Oliver for their afternoon walks in the garden. At first he was quiet, just listening to Emma and Oliver talk. But gradually he began participating in their conversations. He told Oliver stories about his own childhood. He pointed out birds flying overhead and described their colors to his blind son. He laughed at Oliver's jokes. Emma loved watching father and son together. This was what healing looked like. But there was something else happening too, something between Emma and Alexander. It started with small things. Alexander would bring Emma coffee in the morning, made exactly how she liked it. He remembered that she preferred tea in the afternoon, so he made sure the kitchen staff always had her favorite blend ready. When Emma mentioned that she liked a certain type of flower, those flowers started appearing in the music room every day. Emma told herself these were just kind gestures. Alexander was grateful for what she was doing for Oliver. That was all, but then there were the looks. The way Alexander's eyes would follow her around the room, the way he watched her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, the way his expression softened whenever she entered a room, and Emma couldn't deny her own feelings anymore. Her heart beat faster whenever Alexander was near. She found herself dressing more carefully in the mornings, wanting to look nice. She thought about him constantly. When she was at home, when she was falling asleep, when she woke up. She was in love with Alexander Ashford. And it terrified her. They were from different worlds. He was a billionaire CEO. She was a girl who had grown up in a tiny apartment with barely enough money for food. How could someone like him ever want someone like her? One rainy afternoon, everything changed. Emma was teaching Oliver a new piece when the power went out. The mansion was suddenly plunged into darkness. Oliver didn't notice, of course, but Emma stopped playing. "What happened?" Oliver asked. "The power went out." "It must be the storm." Emma could hear rain pounding against the windows. "Don't worry. I'm sure it will come back on soon." But minutes passed and the power didn't return. Emma heard footsteps in the hallway, then Alexander's voice calling out, "Emma? Oliver, are you all right?" "We're fine," Emma called back. Alexander appeared in the doorway holding a flashlight. The beam of light made strange shadows dance across the walls. The storm knocked out the power lines. It might be a few hours before it's fixed. "Can we build a fort?" Oliver asked excitedly. He wasn't scared of the dark. For him, darkness was normal. Alexander looked surprised by the request. "A fort?" "Miss Emma and I sometimes build blanket forts," Oliver explained. "Can we build one now, please?" Alexander looked at Emma and she smiled. "Why not? It could be fun." So they spent the next hour building a fort in the music room. They gathered blankets and pillows from around the house. They draped the blankets over chairs and the piano. Alexander was surprisingly good at fort building. He created a structure that was large enough for all 3 of them to fit inside comfortably. Once the fort was built, they all crawled inside. Alexander hung a battery-powered lantern from the top, casting a soft glow. They sat in a circle, Emma, Oliver, and Alexander, surrounded by blankets and warmth. "This is amazing," Oliver said happily. "It's like a secret castle." "You're the prince," Emma told him. "This is your royal castle." "Then you're the princess," Oliver declared. "And Dad is the king." Emma laughed, but she felt her cheeks grow warm. She could feel Alexander looking at her in the soft light. They talked for a long time, the 3 of them. Oliver told stories about his day. Alexander talked about funny things that happened at work. Emma shared memories of her childhood with her parents. It felt like they were a real family, sitting together in their blanket fort while the storm raged outside. Eventually, Oliver grew tired. He curled up on the pillows and fell asleep, his head resting on Emma's lap. Emma gently stroked Oliver's hair. The boy looked so peaceful when he slept. "He loves you," Alexander said quietly. "He told me the other day that he wishes you were his mother." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I love him too. He's become so important to me. I know. I can see it in the way you care for him, the way you're patient with him, the way you celebrate every small victory." Alexander moved closer, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Emma, I need to tell you something." Emma's heart started pounding. "What?" "These past few months, you've changed my life. You've changed Oliver's life. You've brought light back to this house, back to our family." Alexander's gray eyes were intense in the lantern light. "But you've done something else too. Something I never expected." "What?" Emma whispered. "You've made me feel again. For 2 years, I was numb. I went through the motions of living, but I wasn't really alive. I was just a ghost, haunted by guilt and grief." He reached out and gently touched her face. "But you woke me up. You made me remember what it feels like to hope, to smile, to want something more than just survival." Emma couldn't breathe. His hand was warm against her cheek. She knew she should pull away, should maintain professional distance, but she couldn't move. "Emma, Alexander stopped, struggling with the words. "I care about you? More than I should. More than is appropriate for an employer to care about an employee. But I can't help it. You're constantly on my mind. When I wake up, my first thought is that I'll get to see you today. When I go to sleep, I remember every smile you gave me, every word you said." "Alexander," Emma breathed. "I know this is complicated. I know you might not feel the same way. But I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I needed you to know." His thumb gently stroked her cheek. "You've given me and Oliver so much. You've given us back our lives. And I'm falling in love with you." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. "I thought I was imagining it. I thought there was no way you could feel that way about someone like me." "Someone like you? Emma, you're extraordinary. You're kind and patient and genuine. You're more real than anyone I've ever met. You don't care about my money or my company. You just care about people, about Oliver, about doing what's right." He leaned closer. "You're everything I never knew I needed." "I love you too," Emma whispered. "I've been trying not to. I kept telling myself it was impossible, that we're from different worlds. But I can't help it. I love you." Alexander's eyes lit up with something Emma had never seen before. Pure joy. "Really?" "Really." Alexander closed the distance between them and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was afraid she might disappear. But when Emma kissed him back, the kiss deepened. It was full of all the emotion they had been holding back for months. Longing, hope, love. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. Alexander rested his forehead against Emma's, his eyes closed. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "I'm broken and cold and damaged." "You're not broken," Emma said firmly. "You're healing. We're all healing. Together." They sat there in the blanket fort, holding each other while Oliver slept peacefully beside them and the storm raged outside. For the first time in 2 years, Alexander felt like he had come home. The next few weeks were like a dream. Alexander and Emma tried to keep their relationship quiet at first, not wanting to confuse Oliver or upset the household staff. But it was hard to hide how they felt. Alexander found excuses to be around Emma constantly. He would join their lessons, sitting close to Emma, their shoulders touching. He would take them both out for ice cream. He started leaving little notes for Emma around the house, sweet messages that made her smile. Emma felt like she was walking on air. She had never been in love before, not like this. Alexander made her feel cherished and valued. He listened to her opinions. He asked about her dreams. He treated her like an equal, not like an employee. But Emma was also scared. What would happen when people found out? Alexander was a public figure. When the media discovered that the CEO of Ashford Enterprises was dating his son's poor piano teacher, what would they say? Would they accuse her of being a gold digger? Would they hurt Alexander's reputation? Emma tried not to worry about it. She just focused on being happy in the moment. Then one day, Emma's grandmother got very sick. Emma got the phone call in the middle of teaching Oliver. Her grandmother had collapsed. The ambulance was taking her to the hospital. Emma needed to come right away. Emma's hands shook as she ended the call. "I have to go," she told Oliver, trying to keep her voice calm even though she was panicking inside. My grandmother is in the hospital. Is she going to be okay? Oliver asked, worried. I don't know. I hope so. Emma stood up, grabbing her bag. I'm sorry to cut our lesson short. Don't apologize. Go, be with your grandmother. Oliver reached out and found Emma's hand, squeezing it. I'll pray for her. Emma kissed Oliver's forehead and rushed out of the music room. She was halfway down the hallway when she heard footsteps behind her. Emma, wait! It was Alexander. He caught up to her, his face full of concern. I heard what happened. I'm coming with you. You don't have to. I'm coming, Alexander said firmly. You shouldn't face this alone. Tears filled Emma's eyes. She nodded, too emotional to speak. Alexander drove them to the hospital in his car. Emma sat in the passenger seat. After the surgeon left, Emma turned to Alexander. I don't know how to thank you. You've done so much for me and my grandmother. I can never repay you. I don't want repayment, Alexander said. I just want you to be happy. I want the people you love to be healthy and safe. He took both of her hands. Emma, when I almost lost my wife, I learned that money means nothing if you can't protect the people you care about. Today I was able to protect someone you love. That's worth more to me than any amount of money. Emma threw her arms around Alexander's neck and held him tight. I love you so much. I love you too. They stayed at the hospital until visiting hours ended. Emma sat with her grandmother, who was sleeping peacefully after the surgery. She looked fragile in the hospital bed, but the color was already returning to her face. You're going to be okay, Grandma, Emma whispered, holding her grandmother's hand. And when you wake up, I have so much to tell you. Alexander drove Emma home late that night. She was exhausted, emotionally drained. When they arrived at her apartment building, Alexander insisted on walking her to her door. Emma unlocked the door to the tiny apartment. She suddenly felt embarrassed. Alexander lived in a mansion. Her entire apartment could probably fit in his living room. Everything here was old and worn and shabby. But Alexander didn't seem to notice or care. He looked around with interest, his eyes landing on the old upright piano in the corner. That's your mother's piano? He asked. Emma nodded. It's all I have left of her. Alexander walked over to the piano and sat down. He played a few notes. The sound wasn't perfect, some keys stuck and the tuning was off, but it was still beautiful. This piano has stories, Alexander said. I can feel it. Emma sat beside him on the bench. My mother taught me to play on this piano. Every happy memory I have of my childhood involves this piano. Alexander played a soft melody. It was the same sad, beautiful piece Emma had heard him playing that evening months ago. His fingers moved over the keys with emotion, telling a story of loss and love and longing. When he finished, Emma said quietly, That was the first time I realized you were human. Alexander looked at her with surprise. What do you mean? The night I heard you playing. Before that, you were just the cold CEO, the Ice King. But when I heard you play, I realized you were just a man who was hurting, a man who was trying to survive his pain. Emma took his hand. That's when I started falling in love with you. Alexander's eyes grew wet. I played that night because of you. Because you brought music back into our house. You reminded me of what I'd lost. And somehow remembering helped me start healing. They sat together on the piano bench in Emma's tiny apartment, holding hands, just being together. Outside the city was noisy and busy, but inside there was peace. Stay with me tonight, Emma said softly. I don't want to be alone, Alexander nodded. I'll stay as long as you need me. They lay together on Emma's small couch, wrapped in each other's arms. It wasn't romantic or passionate. It was just two people who loved each other, providing comfort and warmth. Emma fell asleep listening to Alexander's heartbeat, feeling safe and loved for the first time since her parents died. The next morning, Alexander had to leave early for work. He kissed Emma goodbye and promised to check on her throughout the day. Emma went to the hospital to visit her grandmother. When she arrived, she found her grandmother awake and sitting up in bed. The old woman looked weak but alert. Emma, my sweet girl, Grandma said, reaching out her hand. Emma took it and sat on the edge of the bed. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, Grandma joked. But alive. The doctors told me someone paid for my surgery. Someone very wealthy. Her eyes studied Emma's face. It was the Ashford man, wasn't it? The one you work for? Emma nodded. Yes, Alexander paid for everything. Why would he do that? Emma took a deep breath. Because he loves me, Grandma. And I love him. Grandma's eyes widened. You're in love with your employer? I know how it sounds. I know it's complicated, but it's real. Emma's voice was full of emotion. He's not what people think. He's kind and gentle and broken. He's been through so much pain, and somehow we found each other. We're healing each other. Grandma was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. Your mother always said you had a gift for seeing the good in people even when they tried to hide it. So you're not angry? Angry? Emma, I'm grateful. This man saved my life. More than that, he makes you happy. I can see it in your eyes. You're glowing. Grandma squeezed Emma's hand. All I've ever wanted is for you to be happy and loved. If this Alexander gives you that, then he has my blessing. Emma felt tears of relief and joy. Thank you, Grandma. But I want to meet him properly. As your boyfriend, not as your employer. Emma laughed. I'll arrange it. Over the next week, Emma split her time between visiting her grandmother at the hospital and continuing to teach Oliver. Alexander arranged for the best home care nurses for when Grandma was released from the hospital. He even offered to move both Emma and her grandmother into a guest house on his property, so Emma wouldn't have to travel back and forth. At first, Emma refused. It felt like too much. But Alexander convinced her by pointing out that it would be better for her grandmother's recovery to be in a quiet, peaceful environment rather than their noisy apartment building. So Emma agreed. When her grandmother was released from the hospital, they moved into the beautiful guest house at the Ashford estate. It was bigger than their entire apartment had been, with a full kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a living room that had windows overlooking the garden. The best part was that the guest house had a piano. Not an old broken piano like the one in Emma's apartment. A beautiful, perfectly tuned upright piano that Alexander had bought specifically for Emma. Now you can practice whenever you want, Alexander told her. Emma cried when she saw it. This is too much. It will never be too much. Not for you. Emma's grandmother recovered quickly in the peaceful environment. The nurses visited every day to check on her. Mrs. Ashford came by often with homemade soup and cookies. Oliver loved having them close by and visited almost every afternoon. One evening, about 2 weeks after they moved in, Alexander came to the guest house for dinner. Emma cooked, nothing fancy, just simple pasta and salad. But Alexander ate like it was the best meal he'd ever had. After dinner, Grandma excused herself to rest in her room, leaving Emma and Alexander alone. They sat together on the couch, Emma curled against Alexander's side, his arm around her. I've been thinking, Alexander said. About us. About the future. Emma's heart started beating faster. What about it? I want people to know about us. I want to stop hiding. He turned to look at her. I know you're worried about what people will say. About the media attention. But I don't care what they think. I love you, and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed either, Emma said. But your reputation will be fine. Yes, some people will gossip. Some will make assumptions. But the people who matter will understand. Alexander took her hands. Emma, I've spent 2 years hiding. Hiding from my grief, hiding from life, hiding from love. I'm done hiding. I want to live openly and honestly. With you. Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. Okay, we'll tell people together. Alexander smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and made him look years younger. Together. They kissed, and it felt like a promise. A promise of a future together, no matter what challenges they might face. The next day, Alexander made an announcement at work. He called a company meeting and told his entire staff that he was in a relationship with his son's teacher. He made it clear that anyone who had a problem with it could speak to him directly. No one said anything negative. In fact, many people seemed happy for him. They had watched their CEO struggle through grief for 2 years. They were glad to see him finally moving forward. The media found out, of course. There were articles and photos. Some reporters tried to paint Emma as a gold digger, but Alexander shut that down quickly with a statement about Emma's character and qualifications. Most people were supportive. The story of a broken CEO finding love again with the woman who helped his blind son was touching. It gave people hope. Through it all, Emma stayed focused on what mattered: Oliver, her grandmother, and Alexander. She didn't read the articles or pay attention to the gossip. She just lived her life day by day, grateful for the love she had found. 1 month after going public with their relationship, Alexander took Emma and Oliver to the beach. It was Oliver's first time feeling ocean waves. The boy laughed with pure joy as the water splashed over his feet. Emma stood with Alexander watching Oliver play. The sun was setting, painting the sky in beautiful colors that Oliver couldn't see but could certainly feel in the warmth on his face. "This is perfect," Emma said softly. "Not yet," Alexander said. "But almost." Emma looked at him with curiosity, but Alexander just smiled mysteriously. Later that evening, after Oliver was asleep in his room back at the mansion, Alexander took Emma to the music room. Candles were lit everywhere, casting a soft, romantic glow. Rose petals were scattered on the floor. Emma gasped. "Alexander, what is this?" Alexander took her hand and led her to the piano. "Sit with me." They sat together on the piano bench, side by side. Alexander placed his hands on the keys and began to play. Emma woke up the morning after Alexander's proposal with a smile on her face. She looked at the ring on her finger, watching it sparkle in the morning light streaming through her window. It still felt like a dream. She, Emma Chen, was engaged to Alexander Ashford. She heard a knock on the door of the guest house. When she opened it, she found Oliver standing there with Mrs. Ashford. The boy was practically bouncing with excitement. "Miss Emma, Grandma told me, is it true?"
Are you going to marry my dad?
Oliver asked eagerly. Emma knelt down to his level. "Yes, it's true. How do you feel about that?" Oliver threw his arms around Emma's neck and hugged her tight. "I'm so happy. I always wanted you to be my mom. Now you really will be." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She hugged Oliver back, her heart overflowing with love for this brave little boy. "I'm happy too, sweetheart. So happy." Mrs. Ashford was dabbing at her own eyes with a handkerchief. "I always knew this would happen," she said with a smile. "From the very first day I saw you at that diner, I knew you were special. I knew you were the one who could save this family." "You brought us together," Emma said gratefully. "If you hadn't given me that card..." "It was meant to be," Mrs. Ashford interrupted gently. "Some things are just destiny." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Alexander wanted to get married soon. He said he had already wasted 2 years being miserable, and he didn't want to waste another day not being Emma's husband. Emma agreed. She didn't need a long engagement or a huge wedding. She just wanted to start their life together as a family. But there was still one thing Emma needed to do. She needed to visit her parents' graves and tell them about Alexander and Oliver. She hadn't been to the cemetery in months because she'd been so busy with work. On a quiet Sunday morning, Emma took flowers to the cemetery. Alexander offered to come with her, but Emma wanted to go alone this time. She needed to talk to her parents privately. She found their graves and sat down on the grass between them. She placed flowers on each grave, roses for her mother, lilies for her father. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad," Emma said softly. "I'm sorry I haven't visited in a while. So much has happened." Emma told them everything, about Oliver and how he reminded her of herself at that age, lost and scared and needing guidance. About teaching him piano using the techniques her mother had taught her. About watching him blossom from a silent, withdrawn child into a happy, confident boy. Then she told them about Alexander, about how he had been cold and distant at first, hiding behind walls of ice, about how slowly those walls had melted, about how he made her feel loved and cherished and safe. "I know what you're thinking," Emma said, wiping away tears. "He's rich and powerful and I'm just me. But he doesn't care about that. He loves me for who I am. And I love him. Not for his money or his status, but for his heart, for the man underneath all that ice." Emma twisted the engagement ring on her finger. "I wish you could meet him. I wish you could meet Oliver. I think you would love them both." She paused. "I know you're not really here to answer me, but I feel like you'd approve. You always taught me to follow my heart, to be kind, to help people who are hurting. That's what I did. And somehow I fell in love." Emma sat there for a long time, just feeling close to her parents. The sun was warm on her face. Birds sang in the trees. It was peaceful. Finally, Emma stood up. "I'm going to be okay," she told her parents. "Better than okay. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to have a family again. And I'm going to make you proud. I promise." As Emma walked back to the parking lot, she felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Her parents would have been happy for her. She knew that in her heart. When Emma returned to the Ashford estate, she found chaos. Oliver was crying in the music room. Mrs. Ashford was trying to comfort him, and Alexander was on the phone speaking in angry, clipped tones. "What happened?" Emma asked, rushing to Oliver. "Someone wrote mean things about you on the internet," Oliver sobbed. "Dad showed me the article. They said you're only marrying Dad for money. They called you a gold digger and other bad names." Emma felt her stomach drop. She had known this might happen, but she hadn't expected it to hurt so much, or to upset Oliver so badly. Alexander hung up his phone and came over to them. His face was dark with anger. "I'm suing them for defamation. They can't print lies about you and get away with it." "Alexander, don't," Emma said quietly. "It will just make things worse. More attention, more stories." "I won't let them hurt you," Alexander said fiercely. "They can't hurt me." "Not really." Emma pulled Oliver into her lap. "Sweetheart, look at me." "Well, listen to me," she corrected gently. "Those people don't know me. They don't know my heart. They're just making up stories because that's what some people do. But the people who matter, you, your dad, your grandma, my grandma, you all know the truth. That's what counts." "But they said mean things." Oliver sniffled. "I know, and it's not fair. But we can't control what other people say about us. We can only control how we react." Emma wiped Oliver's tears. "I'm marrying your dad because I love him. I loved him when I thought he was just your dad, before I even knew he was rich. I love him for his heart, not his wallet. And anyone who really knows us will understand that." Oliver nodded slowly. "I know you love us. I can feel it. That's right. You can feel it because it's real." Alexander knelt down beside them. "Emma's right. We know the truth. That's all that matters." He looked at Emma with such love and gratitude that her breath caught. "I'm sorry you have to deal with this. It's okay. We'll get through it together." And they did. Over the next few days, more articles appeared. Some were mean, some were skeptical, but some were supportive. People who knew Emma, her old customers from the diner, her former cleaning supervisor, even some of Oliver's doctors came forward to defend her character. One article particularly touched Emma. It was written by a food critic who had eaten at the diner where Emma used to work. He wrote about how Emma had always been kind to everyone, even difficult customers. How she had once given her own lunch to a homeless man who came in hungry. How she had worked 3 jobs just to support her sick grandmother. "Emma Chen is not a gold digger," the article concluded. "She's a genuinely good person, who happened to fall in love with a man who also happens to be rich. Love doesn't check bank accounts. And anyone who knows Emma's story knows that she has more integrity in her little finger than most people have in their entire body." The article went viral. Public opinion started to shift. More people defended Emma. The mean articles stopped appearing. Alexander's friends and business partners threw them an engagement party. Emma was nervous about meeting so many wealthy, important people, but everyone was kind to her. They congratulated her and Alexander and seemed genuinely happy for them. At the party, Emma wore a beautiful dress that Alexander had bought her. It was simple but elegant, just like her engagement ring. She felt beautiful, but more importantly, she felt like herself. She wasn't trying to be someone she wasn't. Oliver came to the party too, dressed in a little suit. He held Emma's hand the whole time, proud to introduce her as his soon-to-be mom. During the party, an older man approached Emma. He introduced himself as Richard Chen, a distant relative of Emma's father. Emma had met him only once many years ago at her parents' funeral. "I read about your engagement in the newspaper," Richard said. "I wanted to come and tell you that your parents would be so proud of you. Not because you're marrying someone wealthy, but because of who you are. Because you stayed kind and generous even when life was hard. That's true success." Emma hugged him, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." "That means everything to me." The weeks leading up to the wedding flew by. Emma and Alexander decided on a small, intimate ceremony. Just close family and friends. They would get married in the garden at the Ashford estate, surrounded by flowers and music. Emma's grandmother was well enough to help with wedding planning. She and Mrs. Ashford became good friends, spending hours together choosing flowers and decorations. Emma was glad her grandmother had someone to talk to besides just her. Oliver insisted on being part of the ceremony. He wanted to play piano during Emma's walk down the aisle. Alexander and Emma thought it was a wonderful idea. They spent hours helping Oliver practice the perfect song. The night before the wedding, Emma lay in bed in the guest house, unable to sleep. She was excited and nervous and happy all at once. Tomorrow she would become Mrs. Alexander Ashford. Tomorrow she would officially become Oliver's mother. Tomorrow her whole life would change. There was a soft knock on her door. Emma got up and opened it to find Alexander standing there in his pajamas. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked with a smile. "No, I kept thinking about tomorrow." He took her hands. "Emma, I need to tell you something." "What?" "When my wife died, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never feel whole again. I thought I would spend the rest of my life going through the motions, pretending to be alive but really just existing." His voice was thick with emotion. "But then you walked into our lives. This poor girl with patches on her coat and kindness in her heart. And you didn't just save Oliver. You saved me too." Emma touched his face gently. "You saved yourself, Alexander. I just reminded you that you wanted to live. You're too modest. You've given me everything: love, hope, a reason to smile again." He pulled her close. Oliver stopped playing piano and called out, "You're officially my mom now." Emma laughed and went to hug Oliver while everyone clapped louder. The reception was joyful. There was music and dancing and laughter. Emma danced with Alexander, then with Oliver, then with her grandmother. She felt so full of happiness she thought she might burst. At one point, Alexander pulled Emma aside. They stood together in a quiet corner of the garden, watching their friends and family celebrate. "This is real, isn't it?" Emma said. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and discover it was all a dream." "It's real," Alexander assured her. He pulled her close. "You're my wife. Oliver is our son. We're a family." "A family," Emma repeated, loving the sound of those words. They stood there watching Oliver play with some children from the household staff, hearing him laugh freely and without fear. The little boy who had once been so lost in darkness was now running around the garden, full of life and joy. "We did it," Alexander said softly. "We healed him. We healed each other." "Yes, we did." Later that night, after all the guests had left and Oliver was asleep, Emma and Alexander sat together at the piano in the music room. Alexander played a soft melody, while Emma leaned against his shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asked. "I'm thinking about how my life used to be. Working 3 jobs, barely sleeping, struggling every day just to survive. I was so tired all the time. So hopeless," Emma smiled. "And now look at me. I'm married to the man I love. I have a son who fills my heart. I have a home. I have a family. I have everything I never knew I needed." "I was thinking something similar," Alexander said, "about how I was just going through the motions before you. Working constantly, hiding from feelings, pushing everyone away. I was alive but not living." He stopped playing and turned to face her. "You taught me how to live again, Emma. You taught me that it's okay to feel pain because feeling pain means you're alive. And feeling pain means you can also feel joy." Emma kissed him softly. "I love you. I love you too. Forever." 6 months after the wedding, Oliver started at a special school for blind children. Emma was nervous about letting him go, but Oliver was excited. He wanted to meet other kids like him. He wanted to learn new skills. On his first day, Emma and Alexander both took him to school. Oliver was wearing his backpack and carrying his white cane, confident and ready. "Are you scared?" Emma asked him. Oliver shook his head. "No. You taught me that being scared is okay, but being brave is better." Emma hugged him tight. "You're the bravest person I know." "That's because I learned from you," Oliver said. Then he grinned. "Can I go now?" "I don't want to be late." Emma laughed and let him go. She and Alexander watched Oliver walk into the school building with his teacher, his cane tapping confidently. He looked so grown up already. "He's going to be okay," Alexander said, putting his arm around Emma. "I know. He's amazing." They stood there for a moment, watching until Oliver disappeared inside. Then Alexander said, "I have a surprise for you." "Another surprise? You're always surprising me." Alexander smiled mysteriously. "Come on, let's go home." When they arrived back at the estate, Alexander led Emma to a part of the property she had never been to before. There was a small building that looked like a studio, surrounded by gardens. "What is this?" Emma asked. "Your music studio. I had it built for you." Alexander opened the door. Inside was the most beautiful space Emma had ever seen. There was a grand piano, recording equipment, comfortable furniture, and huge windows that looked out over the gardens. It was perfect. "Alexander," Emma breathed. This is too much. It's not nearly enough. You gave up your dreams to help Oliver. Now it's time to pursue those dreams again. Alexander took her hand. I want you to compose music. Play music. Maybe even teach other students who need help. This is your space to create and share your gifts with the world. Emma threw her arms around his neck. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for choosing me, for choosing us. Emma spent hours in her new studio every day. She composed music, practiced difficult pieces, and started teaching piano to a few selected students. Children who were struggling, who needed someone patient and kind, who needed someone like her. Her life fell into a beautiful rhythm. Mornings were spent with Oliver before school. Afternoons were for her music and her students. Evenings were family time, dinner together, walks in the garden, music and laughter and love. Emma's grandmother continued to get stronger. She moved into one of the main house's guest rooms so she could be closer to the family. She spent her days knitting, gardening with Mrs. Ashford, and playing card games with Oliver after school. Emma had never been so happy. Every day felt like a gift. One evening, about a year after the wedding, Emma and Alexander were lying in bed together. Alexander was reading a business report while Emma was sketching out a new composition. I was thinking, Emma said, maybe we should expand our family. Alexander looked up from his report. What do you mean? I mean, maybe we should have a baby. Give Oliver a little brother or sister. Alexander's whole face lit up. Really? You want that? I do. I love being Oliver's mother. And I think I'm ready to experience pregnancy and having a baby too, if you want that. Alexander pulled Emma into his arms. I would love nothing more than to have a baby with you. They started trying right away. And 3 months later, Emma found out she was pregnant. When they told Oliver, he was thrilled. I'm going to be a big brother? That's so cool. You're going to be the best big brother, Emma told him. The pregnancy was easy and healthy. Emma continued teaching and composing, though she got tired more easily in the later months. Alexander was attentive and caring, always making sure Emma had everything she needed. 7 months into the pregnancy, Emma gave her first public piano concert. She was nervous about performing with her pregnant belly, but Alexander encouraged her. The concert hall was packed. All of their friends and family were there. Oliver sat in the front row between Alexander and both grandmothers, his face glowing with pride. Emma played pieces she had composed, stories told through music. She played about loss and grief, about finding hope, about love healing broken hearts, about light overcoming darkness. When she finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation. Emma saw Alexander wiping tears from his eyes. Oliver was clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. Afterwards, people crowded around Emma, congratulating her. Several parents of blind children approached her, asking if she would teach their kids. A music producer asked if she would record an album. Emma's dreams were coming true. Not just the dream of having a family, but the dream of sharing her music with the world. 2 months later, Emma gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Elena Grace Ashford. Elena after Emma's mother, Grace for the grace that had brought their family together. Oliver was fascinated by his baby sister. He would sit next to Emma and gently touch Elena's tiny hands and feet, learning what she looked like through touch. She's perfect, he declared. Yes, she is, Emma agreed. Alexander was a natural father to a newborn. He changed diapers, gave bottles, and spent hours just holding Elena and staring at her in wonder. Sometimes Emma would wake up in the night to find Alexander in the nursery, softly singing lullabies to their daughter. Life was full and beautiful. Some days were hard. Newborns were exhausting, and balancing 2 children with Emma's music career was challenging. But it was good hard. The kind of hard that came from a life that was full and meaningful. On Elena's first birthday, the whole family gathered in the garden for a celebration. Oliver played piano for his sister, who clapped her tiny hands and giggled with delight. Both grandmothers cried happy tears. Alexander held Emma close and whispered, "Look at what we built." Emma looked around at their family, Oliver, now 9 years old, confident and happy. Elena taking her first wobbly steps. Alexander no longer cold and distant but warm and present. Both grandmothers healthy and content. Their home full of love and music and laughter. We built something beautiful, Emma whispered back. That night after the party, after the children were in bed, Emma sat at the piano in the music room. She thought about how far she had come. From a poor girl working 3 jobs to a wife, mother, and professional musician, she thought about that day so long ago when Mrs. Ashford had given her a business card in a diner. How scared Emma had been. How uncertain. She thought about meeting Oliver for the first time, that silent, withdrawn little boy who wouldn't speak or play. She thought about Alexander watching from the shadows, too broken to engage, too scared to love again. And she thought about how music had healed them all. How something as simple as teaching a blind child to play piano had transformed all their lives. Emma started to play, not a sad song or a complicated piece, just a simple, joyful melody, the kind of song that makes you want to dance, the kind of song that celebrates life. Alexander appeared in the doorway, drawn by the music. He came and sat beside her on the bench, adding his own notes to her melody. Together they played, 2 people who had found each other in the darkness, who had brought light to each other's lives, who had built a family and a future together. Their music filled the house, chasing away every last shadow, filling every corner with light and love and hope.